All right, so my presentation is going to have to do with, it's about holy sexuality and the struggle with purity of heart and same-sex attractions and that sort of thing. So I'll get started. We're going to get right to the meat of things because that's where it does start for me. So when, I haven't really broken the ice or anything like that. I went second last time, the last two times, so I got to kind of ease into things. How did you guys start? What did you do? Oh, right. I don't even know that. Okay. So I guess here's the thing. So this is going to be more heavy on like the idea of homosexuality, same-sex attraction. So we'll just start with the facts. Ever since I was little, I knew that something was different. Retrospectively, I look back now and I realize that I had an older brother who was physically, like, he was always winning at sports, so I played with him all the time, and I learned that when you play with a brother who's 3 years older than you, you know that you're going to be second place, and I became comfortable in that. I also became comfortable in that passive, just kind of go with things so to keep the boat not rocking. That's sort of where that sort of formed me from the very ground, okay? And throughout my life, so I'm born and raised Catholic and stuff like that, and I drifted, of course, in my teens and 20s, and then I have started to come back. But during my time of coming back, I had to reconcile the notion of experiencing same-sex attractions. How could the church love me? The world tells me that the church should hate me and should reject me and should want to get rid of me or whatever, fix me or something. And so that's where I got to, but now here's how I got there. At that stage. That was like 7 years ago when those thoughts were going through my mind. When I was a teenager, I was molested by a man, and what happened on that instant, I was already very passive. I just kind of took myself on mental holidays and just let it happen. And I was scared while it was going on because I'd never experienced that before, but despite my fear, I still had a physiological reaction. Now I know, I mean, at the time, I never realized that, a teenage boy could rub up against a cactus and experience a physical response. Right? But this is the case. And all that went through my mind was that, oh my God, I'm gay. Like, look what's happening, right? So anyway, when I left that place, I don't know who this person was. It's a long story. I got outside, and I felt the sun hit me, kind of like this, right? Just sort of a side beam, boom. And it just froze me. It was a hot day, but it froze me in my tracks. And I just realized that life's never going to be the same because now I had to wrestle with this question of sexuality it wasn't the first time actually, because when that happened, as soon as I thought, oh my God, I'm gay, it brought back a flood of memories from my past. As earlier, I had exposure to pornography when I was around 9, and shortly after that, I got bored of it because pornography is boring. We always have to go to the next link or the next page back in the day, and I had stopped getting high off of what I was looking at back then. And so the ladies weren't making me high. What does a 9 or 10-year-old think of that? Well, I guess this must mean I'm gay. I'm gay. And I said it out loud to myself, not knowing what it actually even meant completely. But I knew that I just simply wasn't getting high off of that stuff anymore. I note to you guys, this is all stuff that I plan to take to the grave, so I really appreciate that you guys are open to hearing how I ended up where I am today, offering myself for the church. These thoughts, and realizing there's other thoughts too. I remember being much younger, and I was passive. I was socialized to be passive. I longed to be part of the guys group in elementary school. Always felt like I was on the outside looking in, because for whatever reason I was not as aggressive as I needed. I don't know, whatever it was. I loved my pink airwalks. I skipped with the girls and did all that kind of stuff. And by today's standard, I'm absolutely positive I would have been identified as a transgender child and could have been cultured and formed in that way. And who knows where I'd be today if that was the case. I'm glad I wasn't. Anyway, so all these things came back to my mind after that point of abuse. And I had to wrestle with this. And that's not something you want to put on the heart of somebody young without that stuff, young people these days, or at any time, struggle to figure out where they belong in this world. You're adding all sorts of extra ammunition to the pile. Could be an explosion, right? Well, there sort of was. I whether someone wants to agree with it or not, I mean, I got to respect that. But at that point in my life, I didn't want to be gay. And at this time in life, I also just perceive people, you're either gay or you're straight or somewhere in between. And that's it. These sexualized labels, right? Now, if you remember what Bishop Beta was talking about in the morning, what's our first identity we're called into is to be disciples. We're supposed to find our identity first and foremost in Jesus Christ. But yet I was wrapped up in this culture which is forced on all of our youth and our children that says, no, child of God, are you nuts? You're gay or you're straight. That's who you are, right? And that forms how we think about ourselves, forms our self-concept. So here I am trying to run away from the fact that I had to face this and figure out what was what. So I began this tear of going through women, trying to prove to myself, air quotes, that I was straight, right? I figured if I would just, go with enough women, then I would just, fix myself, or I would be straight. I was trying to validate myself in what it meant to be a man. Of course, they didn't realize that being a man has nothing to do with using people, and that's all that I was doing. I was using women to get high because I was addicted to masturbation by then, the pornography and everything like that. And I was using them to get high in that sense, but I was also using them to validate myself. This giant cesspool of usury. And I didn't feel good about that, but I didn't know how else to live. That's all I learned. And my social peer group that I did have, what it meant to be a man was to have the most notches in your bedpost, right? So that also guided me to try to come to fruition in who I am in ways that were actually destructive. So I used a lot of people. I heard a lot of women. And I realized now how destructive that was on myself too. And I got a little tired of that because it was a lot of work. This is the days before internet was mainstream, and I just discovered after internet came out that pornography was available, and it was a lot cheaper, so I didn't have to spend my money on this or that. I could just go and get it anytime, anywhere I wanted. And that's what I did. And I can never unsee what I've seen. In the first group, I talked about how I've given talks to high schoolers and stuff like that, and I just bring it to that point. It's like when you stand at the altar with the person that you want to love forever, who do you want them to see when they blink? They see you? No, they don't. Do you want them to see the images of all the pornography that's been etched into their minds, of all the other girls that they've objectified, or guys? Or do you want them to see you, right? This is a real question. Pornography use amongst younger people this day is under 100%, but pretty close. Okay? It takes, I don't know if I said it, but around 0.3 seconds for a pornographic image to etch itself in your mind. Okay? So now you get someone using pornography for a couple of hours because they're just not getting high enough anymore. Click, click, click. Well, how much more is that burned into the mind? I have to face it. If there is someone for me, through the lens of God, who I could strive to grow in chaste spousal relationship with, that if I was to see her on our wedding day, I know that those images might be there. And the only thing I can do to get past that is to look to the cross. That's why I like churches that have not just a cross, but a crucifix. Because the cross is powerful, but the crucifix is even more powerful. It reminds me of what Jesus did for me, so I can give myself back to him and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to put that in front of the images. That's actually how I beat the pornography. Sorry, I just fell to the evil one there. I didn't beat pornography. God provided that. I'm on the other side of the pornography addiction. Point being, I was using this pornography, not happy with myself, using people. It's the only way I really knew how to live. And this gay question still lingering, right? So I figured, you know what? I'm not getting high on this porn anymore. Maybe I should just test it out. I'll know. Then I'll know. I don't have to run anymore and avoid things. If I click on this same-sex male porn and I like it, then I'll know. But if I don't like it, then I'll know I'm straight. Everything's cool. Just simple as that, right? And so I decided to click on it. And lo and behold, I was hooked. I never planned that, but I couldn't look away. I was mesmerized. I can't say for certain if I liked it or not, but I knew I couldn't stop watching. I wanted to see more. Did I mention that? I wanted to take this to the grave. It's very humbling, okay? But I'm here today. There's a reason. So there I am, saying, here I am. I was addicted to the pursuit of chasing women to prove that I was straight. So really addicted to distraction. And then I became I was addicted to masturbation. That's why I never started smoking. I got asked about cigarettes long after I started compulsive masturbation. I knew I could never stop if I started. So that maybe saved my life. I don't know. So I have that, and then I'm addicted to same-sex male pornography. And it's like, yes, hey, Mom and Dad, guess what? This is where I am right now in my life. Not really. Wasn't too excited about that. I remember looking in the mirror one day when I was in northern Alberta and just saying, like, man, what have you become? You know? What have you become? Because there are choices involved. There are choices involved. Purity of heart, foreign concept. It's interesting because some of the other talks mentioned there was a game changer. There was a 10 CD set about theology of the body explained by Christopher West. I remember getting my hands on that. I don't know where. I listened to each CD every night for 10 nights, and that was it was like turning a jet around. Like, you can't just turn on a dime, right? It started the turn, and I'm like, sexuality, holiness, like, what is this all about? I want that, because everything about my life and the sexuality that I was living was nothing to do with holiness. It was all to do with using people for, like, and objectifying people. That's where I was. That's what I learned. That's what the world taught me. But I still had these attractions to this pornography, right? And I'm wondering, well, everything was making sense. Well, I get it now. When I liked my pink running shoes when I was little, I guess it meant I was gay back then. I must be gay. This is who I am. Finally, one day after using pornography for a bunch of hours, I finally just, I can't run anymore. This is who I am, right? The world says just because you experience an attraction, that means this is who you are. You have to say, this is who I am. I am is very powerful. Isn't that the shortest sentence in the Bible, isn't it? What is it? It's about the fullness of identity. The world is saying that I have to claim this identity in order to be honest with myself. But I wasn't ready to do that. But anyway, I did. At that moment, I came out for the second time to myself. Came out in air quotes because that means different things to different people. And all my hope for being a father one day, having a family, just vanished. It was horrible. It was like complete emptiness. It was all gone. Because I had put myself, that moment that I said I am gay, I put myself in a box that I believed even God couldn't destroy. This is who I am. The only way I'm going to become fulfilled is if I fill this box the way I see the box. Just like if you Google square watermelons, they make square watermelons in Japan, right? They put these watermelons in a box. And what happens? They grow and they end up box-shaped. They conform to the parameters that have been put around them. And that's what I began to do. Very briefly, I began to pursue, I guess if being gay is who I am, because I was still thinking gay straight or somewhere in between, I guess if this is who I am, then it must mean that I'm only going to find happiness if I pursue a relationship in this way. Like, how the way the world tells us. I should find a good guy and so forth. But I wasn't ready to do that. In fact, at this stage, I had already learned that relationships were the last thing I needed to do because my heart was so damaged from the life I previously was living, trying to prove that I was straight. So in fact, that might have preserved me from a lot of struggle. The next part was that there was fear. Once I say, this is who I am, what's the next step? You got to tell your family. Otherwise, you can't really see honestly, eye to eye. So and that's the scariest moment I've ever had. Well, it's the second scariest. The first scariest, well, it's either the first or the second. That was scary, but what was even scarier was actually telling my dad. And that took another 5 years. I lived with that fear. I want you guys to know that if somebody entrust you enough to say, well, they might use the words I'm gay because what they're really articulating is I experience same-sex attractions and I'm trying to find out that I'm loved. If they say, you know what, father so-and-so or mom or dad or brother, I'm gay, ... you got to know that they've taken a huge leap of faith into your arms. Now you think, what is going to happen to them if you don't catch them? Okay? If you move your arms away and choose to not receive them where they're at, then they are sure to fall somewhere else. And there's lots of places that want that to happen. There's people who don't like that I give talks, because I tell people that the church is a place that everybody, doesn't matter what your attractions are, the church is a place that all people can call home and they can belong, and that we're all called to grow in the virtue of chastity amongst the other virtues. Doesn't matter what flavor it is. They don't like that message because it's a message of hope, that there's belonging and love. So this coming out thing, all right, this fear was absolutely crippling. Shortly after I had this moment of coming out and just thinking, well, this fear, I went to church, 7 people in church, northern Alberta. You wouldn't expect to hear any, I don't know what I expect to hear. We had a preacher who was a Catholic church, former Lutheran bishop, retired, became a priest. And he talked about homosexuality from the pulpit, no less, in Alberta, in Canada. That's almost illegal, isn't it? Well, he gently said that there's simply more for us to know. I'm paraphrasing, of course. There's more for us to know. And because I didn't want that in my life, I took that as like a home run. Wow, this is awesome. I've bought some time. I can delay telling my parents. I can maybe, find something out and not be gay or something like that. That's just the way I was thinking. That's not how it works, of course. So anyway, I went home and I started reading everything I could. Everything I could. Of course, it was on the internet, hours and hours and hours for days. And I found 2 major things. Number 1, everybody has something to say about it. Everybody. And number 2, everybody on the internet's right or telling the truth. So I was like, this can't be. How could what you're saying here and what you're saying, how could they both be true, especially when they're contradicting each other? And I'd already been living a lie my whole life, saying I could be happy this way or whatever, living this lifestyle and everything. The last thing I was going to do was substitute my life for someone else's. So instead, I just rejected everything. I just said, God, just please let me find out what simply is. And I was on a journey back to my faith through mathematics, of all things. I realized through prime numbers and infinite harmonics that God exists. That was my logical reason. But it took me towards wanting to express things in terms of truth instead of opinion. One of the things I also realized is that all of these sites were saying, hey, you experience these attractions? They wouldn't even say that. They say, oh, if this, then you're gay. If that, then you're straight. It was all about gay, straight. And the other thing was, they were all demanding that in order for me to be honest with myself, I'd have to embrace this identity and claim it as my own. And say, the only way I could be honest with myself is if I put myself in this box, is what it was. And I just had an aha moment there that, quite frankly, is the aha moment by which we can come to discover the beauty of the church's teachings on this matter. And if we don't have this aha moment, we'll never see the beauty of the church teachings in this. And the beauty is this. We don't specifically choose our attractions. Everybody knows that. But we do specifically choose how to self-identify. I can elevate sexuality to be above my relationship with God. I had to face that. I asked myself, what if I died tomorrow? What would I say to God? Yes, Jesus, I put sex above you. I was like, I don't want to have to say that. So I really began to think about reordering that. How do I see myself? Do I have a chaste self-concept? Do I have a chaste identity? Not in the least at the time. I was pretending to be straight, thought I was gay or something. Doesn't matter. It was about sexuality. It wasn't about my relationship with God. It was not about discipleship that you mentioned downstairs. It wasn't about growing in my relationship with Him as a humble servant or anything like that. It was about sex and sexuality. I had elevated that to be like God. So here I am, thinking I discovered a truth that the whole world would want to know. That which is not specifically chosen, the attractions. That which is specifically chosen, how I identify and define myself. Two distinct things, obviously. Well, I brought it to YouTube. I thought people would be excited. YouTube, of course, everybody loves philosophical discussions. Well, I got ripped to shreds. And I realized that there is an attachment to this identity. That's when I realized how important the matter of identity really was. And it really kind of brought me into awareness that nobody's talking about the role and significance of how we choose to self-identify and define ourselves when we really should be. Because what's going to motivate me to enter a same-sex relationship? I'd have to first say, I'm gay, this is who I am, wouldn't it? What's going to motivate me to say, I want to offer my life to serve the church and express how persons who experience same-sex attractions can be loved and can live holy, chaste lives and glorify God? What comes first? Somebody in their heart saying, I see myself in relationship with Christ first and foremost. Identity matters. And if you don't believe it, try talking to some people of the world about the idea of saying, hey, did you know that a person can be honest with themselves, like me, about the existence of attractions while not choosing to self-identify as gay or straight? They'll look at you like you're from another planet. And most of that, I would imagine, is because they simply have not been exposed to that idea that they're separate things. The entirety of the church teaching on this matter is beautiful. But unless we look at the lens that recognizes those to be distinct, we'll never see it in its fullness. Instead, we'll put it into our box of what we think it is and how right or wrong we think it is. The church teaching is very beautiful on this. It's about love. But how are people going to access that unless we start elevating the conversation? If I say the word gay or straight, how do you know if I'm talking about attractions or identity? How would you know? Can you know? Right? The answer, of course, is you can't know because I haven't clarified it to mean either the one or the other. They're contradictory elements, not specific choice. Specific choice. They can't be meshed into one term. The only place I found that clarified on the whole of the internet was in Catholic writing. And if there's any Orthodox here, also Orthodox pages, okay? So Apostolic Church is what I'm talking about. I realized if I want to be honest with myself, because that's the whole push of the world, I have to recognize that anytime I see gay or straight, heterosexual, homosexual, ex-gay, transgender, whatever, used without clarifying that it's about attraction or identity embraced, without those being clarified as distinct, the fullness of truth is not possibly reflected from whatever that resource is. It's simply incapable of reflecting the fullness of truth. And I wanted truth. I just wanted truth. So it became very easy to flick off things that were distracting me and whittle it down. It reminds me, and I never told this story before, but it reminds me of, I used to be involved with collecting banknotes and stuff, and some friends, they would like to collect the counterfeit notes. There's all sorts, that's borderline illegal, I don't know. But they would collect these things, and there's a way, there could be an infinite amount of counterfeit notes, right, banknotes. Well, are you going to memorize every type of counterfeit to identify a counterfeit? The answer is no, that would take way too much time and energy. Instead, if you knew what an actual $10 bill looked like, through and through, how it was made, the printing layers, everything, perfectly, the front and back plate numbers, where it would line up, the serial number configuration. If you knew all that, you would be able to identify immediately every single counterfeit by knowing one thing, that thing being truth. That's what I was going for. Get rid of these opinions. I just want to know what's true. And it all came back to that not specifically chosen attractions needing to be considered distinct from specifically chosen way of self-identifying and defining myself. Where that was, then I had some place to ground myself. Where it wasn't, see you later. I don't need to look there. So, along this journey, I'm having this conversion of heart to the faith, right? I'm walking with people, scared to death. First of all, how could God love someone like me? First of all, look at how I was living. Secondly, the fear of, what if these Catholics actually knew about me, right? And so bit by bit, I'm sure they knew. It's kind of like when you think you're getting away with something, but your parents know. I'm sure, like the priest that I was confessing to, I know they knew. In fact, a bishop actually invited me to look at going to Courage, and that's another topic I could talk about another time. So obviously, he would know. Courage, by the way, is a group to help people who experience same-sex attraction to walk together towards a virtue. That's what it is. And it got me realizing that I wanted to walk with these people, but I didn't know how. I hadn't, ever since the abuse incident, I didn't have the ability to have a healthy relationship with a man. Somebody pointed that out to me when they said my Facebook list was a bunch of girls. I said, your whole list of Facebook friends, your whole Facebook list is girls except for like a few guys. And here I thought I was being just a big stud and it was all good. But I looked later and I realized that the only men on my list, except for one or two, were all people from before the incident. And it dawned on me, I don't know how. And plus I was so isolating, because pornography isolates, right? And objectification doesn't help me grow in a relationship with women. I was virtually really isolated. I had to relearn that. And I began to learn that through trusting Christ first. And that brought me to trust men. How did I get there? I was invited to learn how to pray. I learned how to pray the rosary again after I was a little boy, but I was 27. And in prayer, like that is the weapon. The rosary was the great weapon for me. There's other prayers too. I don't know if do you use the rosary in the Eastern tradition? Yeah? Yeah, it was very powerful. And I began to walk with these men, and they showed me that it was okay for me to love people in a non-sexual way. I didn't understand that before. I only knew how to lust after people. And in fact, shortly after, I remember sitting in church, after communion. I hope I went to reconciliation before that. I don't remember. But some gorgeous female walked by, and instead of, I would have lustful thoughts about anything. And it came out of my mouth quietly, God is awesome. Beauty. I saw virtue. I learned to recognize virtue. And after living the life I lived, I wanted that virtue. I wanted to know the water she was drinking, right? I was drinking the water of death. But where the virtue is, there's the water of eternal life. So therein began the cycle. The joyful approach to humility, which of course I've mastered. Joke. Just kidding. One person gets it. I'm kidding. Just kidding, guys. So I learned that I needed to go to confession. I needed to see, and of course God just reveals things little bit by little, like kind of cleaning like a muddy window, right? Just gets a little bit more of the picture, and He put things in my path as I was ready for them. And that brought me to trust, and it brought me to grow in relationship with other men to walk with towards greater virtue. And that's basically the point, is that today I strive to grow in Christian virtue. My desire for that is more than it is to satisfy a lustful pursuit, right? But it didn't take overnight. Like I said, it was turning a jet around. It took a while. But the people never abandoned me. Who are these people? They're people like you. They're people just like you, who instead of, hey, I heard you're gay, here's the Bible, see you in a week, right? Or let's just smack it out of you or something. Like they didn't put that box on me. They didn't put the box on me, and I thank them so much for not doing that. They saw me for who I really am, which is a beloved, little s, son of the Most High. That's how they saw me for first. And I know that's how they saw me like that because they wanted me to grow in holiness. They didn't affirm me to become the best gay guy I could be. They wanted me to become the best child of God that I could be, first and foremost. All about identity. They brought me there. And that convicted me in my heart that this was the joy I was experiencing. This is where the joy is. Because there's no joy in trying to become fulfilled via the sexual route. I mean, sex is a beautiful gift from God. I get that. But just like a fire, put it in the fireplace. It's got a place for it. I'm okay with that. I know that if there is something, like I said, I'll go to the foot of the cross. That's where I'm parking for the rest of my life, and I'm good with that. If there is someone for me, God inspired. I'll look to my left or my right. Maybe she'll be there, maybe she won't. And if she's not, that's okay. Because at this stage in my game, I know that I was born here now for the reason to share with you guys that God loves us. And if you guys can be the person to be the living example of why I would want to grow in relationship with Christ, you can win another heart over just like my heart was won over. And when you win a heart over like mine, to want to grow in relationship with Christ, that means you won a heart over to want to grow in Christian virtue. The virtue of chastity is not just physical, it's not just emotional. It's about self-concept. I put the Lord first in how I see myself. That's a chaste self-concept. That is huge. But it all started with people like you who didn't put me in that box. Instead, you just walked with me to the Lord. You were the living, breathing reason. And you don't know when that's going to start. My first encounter with that, I was 13. I gave the 7-hour bawling phone call when I was 27. 14 years after someone showed me God's love, I began to realize that it really was God's love. So you don't know the effect that you might have. I just want to close with something real fast here. Acknowledge the existence of the attractions. No problem. I didn't specifically choose them. I do not feel shame for the existence of them because I know that all I have to do with them is glorify God with them. And that means honoring the virtues. That's all. I joyfully do that. I'm good with that. The other thing is that I mentioned the church doesn't strive to people, the objective is not to have people pray the gay away like we're accused of all the time. We've got to break that myth. We pray that we can grow in relationship with Christ. Trust Him. And you can tell if someone is truly growing in relationship with Christ if their heart becomes open to His virtue. And the last thing is that if we want to have a hope of reaching our youth, especially about this, because we all know that they're being educated by the world, we need to invite. There's 3 things. We need to invite them to understand more and to walk and grow instead of indoctrinate, right? Because we get accused of indoctrination all the time. So we're going to invite them. We'll undo that accusation. The second thing is elevate. If you can't talk about something in a whole way that addresses all people, then you got to fix how you're talking about it. Chastity is not for gay people, air quotes. Chastity is for all people. Growing in holiness is not for, quote, gay people. It's for all people. Striving to walk together in relationship is not for, get the idea? That's what we've got to bring it up. Otherwise, we can be rightfully charged with discrimination. And whether that's in the courts or not is secondary, because the public opinion is going to be what sways the kids in your school systems to want to reject the church. They got to know that it's not about, quote, gay people. It's about people. And the last thing is disarm. How likely is someone going to want to follow you to Christ if you've said things and you were imprudent in how you approached them? Disarm by getting to know them. Get to know them. I'm imagining that my friend so-and-so is right here, who is not quite where I am. I have to make sure that what I say might open a door or keep a door open that he might want to grow deeper in a relationship with Christ, instead of pandering to his sexual urges. Disarm. So it takes a knowledge of the hearts of the people who are experiencing this. And you ain't going to get there unless you have a relationship. So it'll take all of us out of our comfort zones. But that's the takeaway. The reason I'm here is because somebody like you won my heart over for the Lord. And all you guys can do the same. If you are the living, breathing, walking example of why someone would want to grow in relationship with Christ. So that's the takeaway. So thank you. That's it.